My name is Perry Eugene Wallace, Jr., and I'm a lawyer and a law professor. I live in Silver Spring, Maryland, just outside Washington, D.C. I was lucky enough to have a number of scholarship offers, over 100, in my senior year. I had done well as an athlete and as a student. And there were two considerations probably that helped in my decision to go to Vanderbilt. One, that Vanderbilt is a school that insists on the athletes being student athletes. I wanted to get a real education, not to play around with it, so I wanted to go to a school that had an excellent academic reputation. The second consideration really plays off of the first one. I visited a lot of schools that were very fine academic institutions, but didn't make the same requirement or insistence on their athletes that they be good students. Vanderbilt didn't have a physical education major or any of those majors where athletes could go in and kind of get lost and take courses that were gut courses that were useless. And I like that. So those things were important. So high quality athletics, but high quality academics. Those were the things that attracted me to Vanderbilt. There were a number of challenging aspects. One, and this sounds strange to people in modern times, but one was just getting up and going across that campus and functioning on that campus from day to day. You have to see that statement against the backdrop of the fact of the nature of segregation, which is what I grew up in. Segregation was a command. It was an interdiction, it was a way of life, and it could become a state of mind. So integrating wasn't going to be just a natural process of putting blacks and whites together. And if you had existed in segregation, you had a certain apprehension about coming into the white mainstream or into a white institution. So it was difficult just from day to day. Then you had your encounters with people, including the being ignored by lots and lots of people. Existing as an outsider, being like Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man, and we men and women were invisible to many, if not most people. And then there were other people who were simply hostile. So those were features that were common to all of us as African American students here at Vanderbilt. In addition, for me, there was the idea of going on the road to basketball games, to these gymnasiums at universities in the Deep South. That was its own challenge. It presented its own dangers and anxieties. Those were difficult too. Well, the toughest thing, there were just common things that happened everywhere, frankly, So, in the writings by journalists and others, they often seize on a game at Ole Miss in my sophomore year, where it was particularly rough. I got the referees let the players, sort of beat on me a lot, and I got an injury in the eye and so on and so forth. But frankly, a lot of times it was like that. The crowds were tended to be vicious and bigoted in many of the places. They all said the same things, the racial epithets, the threats and the like. There were too many times when the referees allowed rough play where I was concerned, wouldn't call fouls and the like. Sometimes there were just nasty waitresses, nasty people at counters, at stores, and this was the South, the Deep South in the 1960s. So those were common characteristics that I often experienced in most of those places. I guess for me, Well, let me just explain how I saw it. See, I was as good as the other students academically. See, and so that wasn't, and I'm not being arrogant about it. It was simply the case, and there was nothing like tests and test scores and grades, and provided the professors were fair. And then one of the things about engineering is that, it's hard for somebody to decide to flunk you, and it's really clear how you work out a formula in differential equations, or in quantum physics, or whatever it might have been. The answer was just there, so I did it. And so I could have felt anger in both categories about discrimination. Now, actually, in my case, just to give you how it hit me, it was the social world where there wasn't any clear test, and to the extent that, so that you could say, well, I'm just as good as they are, and blah, blah, blah. It didn't quite work like that. What simply happened was that there was exclusion, and social affairs are more subjective, more personal. They're much more a matter of choice. And and I think that's the arena that probably was most offensive to me, because it was actually a rather stern test, as strict and stern and indicative as the test is of your academic ability or your athletic ability. That social arena is like the base in a way, because it starts with people and ends with people and the societies that they're in. And when they reject you there, just think, they've essentially rejected you for some of the most important reasons, because they've rejected you in the arena of your humanity and human interaction. It's really people's way, and it can have the effect of really making a statement that none of that other stuff matters. And specifically, the athletics would matter if it's time to play a game and win a game. And so on Saturday nights at home games, especially if we won the game, then I got a chance to be somebody, super somebody. But then, that would fade away pretty soon, and I'd be super nobody. And that really was the closest thing to a sense of outrage that I felt. In the academic arena, quite frankly, I think that the faculty, were fair enough and even encouraging in many instances. And so I could really pursue academic goals, but I had a firm enough background. And in instances where people did sort of try to say, well, maybe you ought not take this course, maybe you ought not major in that. That's basically when I said I didn't get angry, but it became really clear to them that I was not going to stay here if they tried to make me do anything less than pursue high objectives academically. Athletically, sure, there were real insults, and a lot of them were on the road. Some of them were here. If the team was in a slump and not doing well, then there was a tendency by a lot of people to blame it directly on me. And if I had a slump, one season, I developed mononucleosis. And usually that gets you laid up in bed and it gets you hospitalized. Not me, I'd keep playing. But the problem was that I had to work my way out of it in order to get back to my level of playing, and nobody was really very sympathetic. If during the period where I just was physically weak, if you got that stuff, again, it often lays people out. So I guess what I'm saying is that if you took those three categories, sort of the arena of social affairs and interactions, and then academics and athletics, I felt most offended by the social response, because that was the most personal response, and that was the response in the arena that encapsulated the other two. Just as in society, we've got social interaction, then we've got our professions and various other activities. When shut out socially, we as the African American students developed our own response. And in some ways it tracks what African Americans have done, and other groups, by the way, who've been excluded for various Asians, Hispanics, Jews, and others, but we developed our own alternative. We wanted to have, we understood that humans are social beings. One needed to have a nurturing, useful social environment, a place to be. And so we as African American students created our own environment. And as I said in the Murray Commons lecture, we organized though around the right principles. We unified to support one another, but we didn't exclude people. There were white members of the Afro-American Association, and there were faculty members and members of the administration who interacted with us all the time, came to our events and everything. And so what we decided was to create our own social world, and so that we could have the kind of sort of human ecosystem, if you will, that nourishes us and which we could interact. But the Afro-American Association, and then other less formal links. We hooked up with the students from Fisk and Tennessee State. And it wasn't just about a party. And we had those too, and that was great. But you know what was good, and this is the thing about tough times and developing a movement, that people acted a lot better than they ordinarily would have. Little internecine squabbles, or acting too bad, having too much fun. Basically, there was a certain sense that we were brothers and sisters, that we really needed to support each other, and it's interesting to me to this day, just how the impact that had in keeping the level of our interaction, healthy, nourishing and good as much as it was fun. But we reached out, and as I said at the lecture, that we created a world that brought in a whole lot of different people, and they were older and younger, and they were from outside the campus and on the campus and the like, and it included white students. It included students who were, the white students who had the most character and the sense of leadership, who are often members of student government or student associations or leaders in the Greek system, were often people who came and interacted with us too.